Before we begin, this video will contain minor spoilers for Elden Ring, but there won't be any major story spoilers or final bosses shown. This video is intended for everyone, even those who haven't played the game. So if that's you, maybe stick around and hopefully I'll convince you.
The fallen leaves tell a story.
These remains are important, which seems strange. An old pile of bones and flesh lying here motionless. Some kind of deer or stag-like creature, but far larger than normal, resting in the midst of a ruined temple and an otherworldly sky. It certainly all seems very ceremonious, but this thing is just a corpse. This creature's life seemingly ended long ago, and yet its body hasn't fully decayed. It's been here long enough for new life to sprout from its antlers. Everything about this place feels distant, ancient, and somehow it still lives on. Somehow, these remains are still important. What part did it play in this world? And what part will you play? Souls games aren't for everyone. The series is renowned for being incredibly brutal and unwelcoming to new players. They're games you really gotta try to enjoy, and for the most part, it's this trying that leads to people dropping these games. I mean, let's face it, nobody was having fun during their first 20 minutes in Undead Burg. That was my experience during my first playthrough of Dark Souls. I knew going into it that it would be hard, but it was far worse than I was expecting. I found myself slamming my head against the wall that was the giant shielded knight in Undead Parish, and after dying over and over and over again, I simply quit. I decided I wasn't having fun, so I dropped the game for good. Then around 2 years later, after some begging from a friend of mine, I reluctantly jumped back into the world of Dark Souls, made it back to where I rage quit, and finally defeated my nemesis. The rest is history, and playing through Dark Souls 1 became one of my favorite gaming experiences of my entire life. These games are incredibly hard to get into. They're hard to enjoy, but the payoff for actually putting in the time and the effort to beat them is truly unlike any other game. The world, the lore, the history, its characters and music and community, every aspect builds to create an unforgettable experience. But sadly, so many will miss out. Many will never make it past that night in Undead Parish. Many may never even give the game a chance. But this is the stark reality of the Souls series, and many games like it. Accessibility is the death of nuance. There is meaning in the difficulty of these games. But there is one game that defied all odds and broke through that barrier. And at the center of it all is a tree. Dark Souls was always incredibly popular. Before 2022, the combined total sales for the series was over 27 million. But Elden Ring was different. After just under 3 years of release, it surpassed that total sales number of Dark Souls, and as of April 2025, has sold 30 million copies. Elden Ring is special. It's another FromSoft game, no doubt, and is essentially just Dark Souls 4 in everything but name. However, something about it feels so much more surreal, almost dreamlike. This game, this world, transcended what this series could be. It has so much to say, and so much more to offer. Because Elden Ring is for everyone. It's dark, damp, and foggy as the moonlight just barely shines through the canopy of the mistwood. You come across a strange structure in the midst of these woods and find an elevator inside. you take it down into the unknown. After what feels like ages of descent, this hidden underworld slowly begins to open up to you. A cavern so immense and vast, it defies any sense of logic in this world. A beautiful purple-blue hue paints the roof above, creating this mesmerizing false sky. It feels as though you've just walked into a dream, into the distant past, and a whole new world has just opened up. This is a shared experience that nearly every player has had, and is one of the first moments that truly made me rethink this world that I was exploring. An ancient, lost city hiding away right beneath my very feet. If this ethereal place was hiding here this entire time, what other wonders are there to find in this world? What beautiful sights and distant memories still lie buried beneath the dirt here? And what memories have died beneath that same dirt? Shattered and broken, ruined beyond recognition. In 1914, a farmer in the country of Malta discovered a strange formation of rocks in the soil while he was plowing his field. This triggered an excavation, revealing that this anomaly was actually an ancient temple, yet another entry in a growing series of discoveries all across Malta. These are the megalithic temples of Malta. For a while, these structures were considered to be some of the oldest standing ruins on the planet, dated as far back as 3600 BC. But they're far more intriguing than just what their age suggests. You see, they weren't all built at the same time. They had been continuously constructed, maintained, and improved upon over the course of 1,000 years, with each new period showing new signs of evolution in their architecture. These temples are evidence of an entire civilization. The Neolithic people who built these structures lived and thrived here for centuries, constantly developing and spreading out across the land. It isn't entirely known what these temples' purposes were, but there is strong evidence that these people were highly advanced in science and may have even had their own religious beliefs, holding ceremonies and rituals in these temples. In Manidra, a site along the southwestern coast, one temple was built to align with celestial bodies, illuminating the inside during each equinox and solstice of the year. It's incredible that people who lived so long ago, that feel so distant from us now, were still able to achieve such astounding feats like this. Perhaps they weren't so different from us now. In Elden Ring, we haven't changed the theme present in our previous titles, which is the feeling of achievement through overcoming challenges. But we also set up the concept of taking that theme and giving it a high degree of freedom to make it more accessible to more players. Dark Souls was very intensely a dark fantasy game. I mean, it's literally in the name, but that genre went beyond just visuals and storytelling. Dark Souls was insanely difficult and didn't really offer much room to breathe. When faced with a tough section or boss fight, all you could really do was just keep slamming your head against it until you finally got it. Elden Ring takes a bit more of a high fantasy approach. There's moments of levity, of beauty all throughout, and especially with its gameplay. Being the first open world entry in the series was a bold decision, but was also that crucial ingredient, that room to breathe. Both in terms of the difficulty and the learning curve, as well as the world setting, you feel that you can come up for air. I remember when I first made it to Radahn. I was ecstatic because I'd seen and heard so much about this incredible spectacle of a fight, but I was also nervous. Nervous because I knew how challenging he was. When I made my first attempt, I did decently enough, but got killed pretty quickly. It felt like I wasn't doing nearly enough damage to him than I should have, like I was too underleveled. So I asked my friend, who at the time was watching me play, if I should keep fighting him until I beat him, or leave and go level up a bit, then come back later. He then said something along the lines of, "It's up to you. Keep fighting or go grind some levels. It's very much choose your own difficulty here." These words, This moment is what made me realize the brilliance of Elden Ring. The open world aspect didn't just mean you had the freedom to go wherever you want, but it also gave you the freedom to fight bosses whenever and however you want. Sure, the other Souls games did always give you the option to just turn around and grind some low-level enemies to get souls, then level up, but Elden Ring's version of that is so much grander, so much more freeing. I had the option to go off and explore the entire other side of the map before coming back to exact my revenge on Radahn. You're given so many different angles and ways to approach this game, and that's one of the keys to its success. But you'd think with Elden Ring's extreme emphasis on freedom and accessibility, it would douse out that flame of accomplishment and triumph you feel when beating a boss, that the game would lose its nuance. But somehow, it doesn't. FromSoft was able to walk that fine line of allowing these bosses to be made easier, but not too easy. Just look at Spirit Ashes for example. It's very rare a Spirit Ash will be so incredibly strong that it can solo a boss. Most bosses are designed around the idea that you'll likely be using them, so they typically have very wide swinging and AoE attacks that will easily hit multiple targets. Not to mention, a lot of the time your summon will die before you kill the boss, making that final stretch of health this really cinematic last stand 1v1 moment. The series has always had elements of this philosophy, giving you the tools you need to make the game easier and leaving it up to the player if they actually want to engage with them. Just look at all the optional summons or insanely broken magic in Dark Souls 1. There's even the iconic multiplayer feature that allows other players to join you and help you beat a boss you may be struggling with. Elden Ring is simply taking these elements and expanding them. And I would argue that with this choose your own difficulty philosophy, it can make the game even more rewarding than a traditional Souls game. When I was faced with that choice to go explore somewhere else and come back to Radahn later, or keep fighting him until I prevailed, I chose the latter. I decided to keep banging my head against him, and it led to one of the most memorable and heart-pounding fights I've ever had in a Souls game. Having the knowledge of an easier route, but sticking to the path you're on, can make that feeling of accomplishment even more potent, and giving the player that freedom of choice will minimize situations like myself and the Knight in Dark Souls 1. I've always been fascinated by this everlasting argument that Souls games shouldn't have an easy mode. Generally, I like to think that I agree. Miyazaki's driving philosophy is, of course, improvement through failure. And while it's not a philosophy that will appeal to everyone, it is one that can be extremely valuable to everyone, and I will always advocate for players to give these games a try because of that. But that doesn't mean these games have to be relentless through and through, and I think Elden Ring is the perfect answer to this question. Back in Demon's Souls, the option to summon another player to help you get through a tough area or boss encounter was born from a personal experience of Miyazaki. He was driving up an icy, snow-covered hill when a car in front of him got stuck and began to slip. Then, so too did the car behind him. It seemed like they would get stuck there, trapped on this hill, until someone bumped their car into the one behind him, pushing the car upward. Slowly but surely, they all worked together to make it up the hill, and eventually, they all made it home safe. It's a beautiful story about people coming together in the face of adversity. The world is a harsh, difficult place, but when people choose to help each other, it's a reminder of what we're really here for. A reminder that the world isn't always so gloomy. There's moments of levity, of hope. That's what makes these games so special, and it's what makes Elden Ring stand out. Elden Ring still has challenge, I mean just look at Melania. But then of course you have the whole tale of Let Me Solo Her, someone who became famous for helping other players with a difficult boss, simply because he wanted to. The game is able to maintain that difficult and oppressive atmosphere, that nuance, while being so much more accessible than any entry before. The people who play these games, the communities, are a vital piece of the Soulsborne legacy, and with so many people embarking on their first ever journey in the series, what community compares to Elden Ring's? Upon reaching the bottom of the elevator, The path ahead is relatively narrow. You make your way through these ruins with felled pillars and what look like gravestones with ancient designs etched into them. It's surrounded by trees and grass and a cascading waterfall. Life is still thriving this far down. It eventually opens up into one of the most beautiful areas in the game, the heart of the Shifa River. Enormous pillars and bridges stand tall, hanging high above you. You're now directly below this beautiful false sky. There's a wonderful harmony between these ancient ruins and all the budding life down here. An entire ecosystem is thriving with all kinds of animals roaming about. Along with the very much alive trees scattered about, there's also these massive petrified trees, like stone spikes jutting from the earth. It gives this entire cavern an air of ancient history that goes back much further than anything we've seen before. One of the first things you'll notice down here are these corporeal beings known as the Ancestral Followers. Other than being a ghostly blue, they're large, incredibly accurate, and seem to live in perfect harmony with nature. We see them foraging or tending to the plant life, animals following them around. They seem to not only live among nature, but worship it. Which leads us back to these remains, the center of their worship. Lying in this ruined temple, a carcass of some great deer-like creature refuses to fully decay. I like to think these remains have been here for eons, being worshipped and heralded as this divine being by the followers. And once we light each of the fires at these stone tablets scattered about, it begins to glow, the same ghostly blue of the followers, emanating from the corpse. And touching it leads us to one of my favorite bosses in the game. Now, I know a lot of you guys like to fall asleep to my videos, which is something I love to hear, as part of my goal for these videos is to make something you can easily listen to in the background. But summer is here, along with longer, brighter days, and while all that extra daylight can feel energizing, it can quietly sabotage your sleep. That's where this video's sponsor comes in, Manta Sleep. Manta Sleep makes the highest quality sleep masks you can get, and are designed for maximum comfort and ease of movement while you sleep. This here is the Manta Pro Sleep Mask, and it has been a game changer for me. It's easily adjustable to fit any size head and provides 100% blackout. There's a huge selection of masks to choose from, like the weighted mask, the silk mask, or even the sound mask with built-in Bluetooth headphones so you can continue listening to my videos. So click that shopping icon on the bottom left of your screen and head over to mantasleep.com and use code EMBER for 10% off, as it is a great way to support me directly. Thank you so much to Manta Sleep for supporting the channel. As you enter this dark expanse of rock and moss, a great creature stands in the distance. The remains given life, the ancestor spirit. Accompanied by a beautifully ethereal and mystifying theme, probably my favorite boss theme in the game, this fight feels so separated from anything else in the lands between. The ancestor spirit is not particularly difficult really in any way. Its moveset is very simple, and it's designed to be far more cinematic than an actual challenging fight. It leaps through the air, creating its own stepstones, then crashes down onto you. It has a deadly spectral breath that it spreads across the ground. While it attacks you consistently, charging at you with its great crown of glowing horns, it almost feels as though you're the aggressor here. Like this ancient creature is merely defending itself from an intruder. It was very much a "am I the bad guy?" moment for me as I killed this seemingly innocent beast. Everything about this fight, about the ancestral followers and Shifa River, it all feels far older than anything else we've seen. It feels important. So, what do the temples of Malta say about how we value these remnants of the past? How exactly does the past inform the present? These temples may have been desecrated by time's unrelenting march, their purpose and people forgotten and left to decay, but there's one thing that can never fade: its memory, its meaning. We may never truly know what kind of people lived here, or what happened to them, but what we do know is priceless. We know that they lived, that they were once a people perhaps just like us. It's fascinating to peer into the past of those who came before us, even if all we see is a mere fraction of who they were. And this very idea seems to be such a dominant theme in Elden Ring. This relationship, this symbiosis between the ruins and memory of those who came before, and the new budding life carrying that memory forward, is what the Lands Between is built on. The ancestral followers worshipped the ancestor spirits because they symbolize this relationship, the cycle of life and death. The description on the clarifying bud horn reads, "Said to be a budding horn. The ancestral followers believed that the horns of a long-lived beast continue to bud like antlers, over and over again, until the beast one day becomes an ancestral spirit." This theme of new life sprouting from death, from the remains of our predecessors, is the very basis of what history is. And in the Lands Between, it's what came before that pushes us forward. A big complaint that I had during my first playthrough was the lack of, well, people. Sure, the map was enormous and full of life, but compared to other open world games, it felt barren. The Academy of Raya Lucaria, the town of Celia, even Lanedale, the capital of the Lands Between. There's all these grand locations meant to be full of people, and yet they all seemed so empty. Why is that? I mean, Skyrim, a game that came out a decade prior, had far more towns and villages, all filled to the brim with NPCs, both small and hugely important. It made the game feel so immersive and real, with each NPC having their own personality and backstory, living their own life, even if they were all voiced by the same 3 voice actors.
May the gods watch over your battles, friend. Did you just wander in out of the white?
Trade.
You know what's wrong with Skyrim these days? Everyone is obsessed with death.
But in Elden Ring, there's barely any people to find throughout these major locations, with all the life you do come across being either hostile or deranged, no longer themselves. But this lack of life is kinda the whole point. See, there's one crucial difference between our real-life ruins like the Temples of Malta and the vast history found in Elden Ring. The Lands Between is dead. This place we find ourselves in is a post-apocalyptic corpse of what used to be this grand, powerful kingdom. While we can certainly find meaning and intrigue in places like the Temples of Malta, it can also be easy to gloss over them, to be distracted by the present day, by all the modern buildings, by the new. It can be easy to forget where all this new life came from. But in a world like Elden Ring's, all that's here is the past. It's a world dominated by it, where you can find a reminder of the past around every corner. Suddenly, it becomes so much more apparent why that history is important, why we should go out and explore it, because the game wants us to. There's something of importance to find in every nook and cranny. Catacombs scattered about, field bosses to challenge, and NPCs offering a variety of quests. Even something as simple as a beautiful view is a worthy discovery. Sure, this place is riddled with monsters, and its cities and towns are husks of what they once were. But somehow, it's still so easy to find beauty in this world. And I think this goes back to that idea of this symbiotic relationship between life and death, the old and the new. These ruins aren't being overtaken by nature, they're complemented by it. The horns on this dead beast continue to grow. Because nature is an extremely important element in Elden Ring. Most of your traveling will be among the trees and the grass, the colorful skies and the animals. These animals may be overlooked as they aren't very rewarding to kill, but they add so much to the atmosphere of these locations. There are boars, crabs, deer, owls, eagles, and many, many more. There's even this one spot in Limgrave where you can find dozens of dogs all scattered about, although I'm not too sure why they're all right next to a chest holding the green turtle talisman. These are what make up those moments where you can come up for air. The quiet peacefulness of just existing in this land. The calm of resting at a grace among the ruins of old. And the new budding life. Nature can be used as a sort of language to decipher time, just how old something might be. And what symbol of nature measures the whole of the lands between? The tree at the center of it all. The Erd Tree is the guiding light of all things in the lands between, and will be the center of attention from the moment you step out into Limgrave. A massive shining tree that dominates the skybox. It seems like it should be incredibly ancient. Massive trees in our worlds, like the giant sequoias native to California, are among the oldest living organisms on Earth, with several being over 3,000 years old. The Erd Tree has similarly stood for thousands of years. It's seen civilizations rise and fall. It's seen wars waged and gods birthed. And yet, despite this tree's seemingly infinite reach, even the Erd Tree had a predecessor. The description of the item root resin reads, "Resin secreted from the roots of the great tree. Can also be found in your trees on the surface." The roots of the great tree were once linked to those of the Erd Tree, or so they say, and it is for this reason catacombs are built around great tree roots. Whatever this great tree was, it was separate from what we know as the Erd Tree now. It very well could have been here long before life even began, as it's possible this great tree either housed or was itself something called the Crucible, the primordial form of the Erd Tree, where all life was once blended together. Once again, we have this connection of the old and the new. The great tree and the Erd Tree, together connecting everything in the lands between. All its people, its wildlife, its present, and its history. One such piece of history is the Mistwood Ruins. They're found in Limgrave in the Mistwood, near where the Schiefer River well can be found. Moss and vines cover the broken stones. It's not clear what this place was once used for. All we can find is a small underground tunnel home to the Axe Talisman. But locations like this are everywhere, all a part of the history of this land. Many churches of America can be found scattered about in every part of the world. Faith in America and the Golden Order used to be far stronger and widespread, but now these churches are vacant, crumbling. With America gone, the faith has seemingly begun to fade. Some ruins seem to be far more ancient than these churches and castles, perhaps even dating back to the time of the Great Tree. Both in Caelid and the mountaintops, immense skulls and rib cages lay embedded in cliff sides, slowly being overgrown. Maybe these were the giants that we hear once lived in the mountaintops, or an even older, larger ancestor to these giants. The ruins found underground in Schiefer River might just be as old as the giants, built by some kind of ancient dynasty that long predated the Erd Tree. Everything you find, whether it be the home to an ancient primordial spirit, or just some old pile of rocks, it all makes up the rich history of the lands between. But while this may be a dead world, rubble blended with wildlife, there is still more life to find aside from the golden trees and wandering animals. Elden Ring may not have the huge towns with dozens of people to speak to, but there are still a few kind souls you'll meet. Maybe it's because they're so rare, but whenever you do come across one of these NPCs, it's exciting to find other people here that aren't constantly trying to kill you. And because you'll meet many of the same characters at different points throughout the game, it feels as though they're making this journey alongside you. You start to get to know them and are happy every time they turn up. Like seeing an old friend. There may not be many of you, but you're all exploring and discovering this lost land together. Remember the Mistwood Ruins I mentioned earlier? Well, aside from housing the Axe Talisman, it's also the place where we can first meet Blythe the Half-Wolf, who is easily one of my favorite NPCs, if you couldn't tell. His introduction, hearing a distant howl in the woods, only being able to summon him with a specific emote is really cool. And with how early on you meet him, he'll be one of the first characters you grow attached to. I remember desperately wanting his armor, hoping his questline would eventually reward me with it. And, well, at least I was right. Everything in this land, from the trees and the dogs, to the cities and ruins, to the creatures and the people, it all holds importance. The Lands Between is this rich world full of mystery and intrigue that reveals so much more when given a keen eye. FromSoft has always been masterful at creating worlds that thrive off environmental storytelling, allowing the player to delve into the secrets of the world through what they see around them and by examining the items that they find. And Elden Ring is easily the best of these. One of my favorite examples of this is the dining hall in Stormvale Castle. A large, open room with dozens of arms and other body parts dangling from the ceiling. It plants this horrifying concept of Godric in your mind, his grafting giving him this sick and sadistic pleasure, flaunting it about his castle. But then there's this giant painting of Godfrey on the wall. Sure, Godric might be twisted and monstrous, but he's not doing this out of bloodlust or some kind of deep-rooted insanity. He believes grafting will give him power, enough so that his ancestor Godfrey might recognize that power. He's obsessed with the grafting of body parts so much that he fills the very place he eats with them. He leaves the body bags all around in piles, festering with blood. Before even seeing Godric, the idea of this disgusting and obsessive, yet pathetic monster is painted in our minds. And that's just from this one room. This is one of the greatest strengths of Elden Ring's immersion. From the Erd Tree itself to the etchings on a single stone, everything holds importance. A meticulously detailed and lived-in world, and we have the freedom to go wherever we want in it. So let us delve down into the depths once again, and reach the city lingering high above Shifra River. At last it is revealed. Nokron, the Eternal City. And in the midst of this ancient city is yet another pocket of nature. Here lies the ancestral woods, home to once again the ancestral followers. But this time, they're no longer spirits, but actual flesh and bone. We know that the remains of long-lived beasts can eventually become an ancestor spirit. So perhaps something similar can happen to the followers. Maybe the ones we find by the river are a more natural, ancestral form of the Erd Tree's reincarnation. And just as before, here we can find yet another set of pillars to light, and another long-lived beast just waiting to awaken. But this fight is different from before. This is the regal ancestor spirit. What is the point of learning about our history? It's a question I would often ask myself when I was younger. Always so bored by my history classes and just wanting to get them over with. They were almost as boring as math was for me. But little did I know, I was deeply invested in learning about history, and I just didn't know it. It was through the abyssal ruins in Pokemon Black and White, or the expansive backstory of the Hive in Destiny that I became, in my own incredibly nerdy way, a historian. I was fascinated by the lore in these games, and slowly but surely, so too did I become fascinated by real-life lore. Because that question I was asking myself was far more important than I knew. Knowing our history is vital so we don't repeat the same mistakes. It answers the great mystery of where we came from, how we got to where we are. Every aspect of history, even the most obscure, builds the wide tapestry of the life that is lived. And this boss is the embodiment of that idea. Its name, the Regal Ancestor Spirit, implies it is far more powerful, far older, and more sacred than the previous fight. This is the king of the Ancestor Spirits, and its moveset shows it. It's still slow and beautifully cinematic, but now the arena is filled with other spirit animals. The boss will occasionally collapse and disappear, taking over the body of one of these animals, and gaining a new move depending on which animal it controls. Once its health gets low enough, it will begin to drain the life of all the animals around it, killing them but healing itself in return. True power over life and death. It once again feels wrong to fight such an elegant beast, this symbol of power and worship. But maybe it isn't so simple. Maybe instead of an adventurer slaying an innocent beast, this fight is meant to symbolize us facing our past head on, recognizing our history for what it is, and using that knowledge to usher in a better future. Maybe that's what Elden Ring is all about. So, in a final crescendo, we once again slay this ancient beast. What would have happened had that man not noticed those strange rocks in his soil? What would have happened if he had never reported it and that temple was never excavated? Well, honestly, probably not much. After all, there are tons of other temples made by these same people all over Malta. But still, we would have one less piece of history. They say you die twice. Once when you stop breathing, and a second time when someone says your name for the last time. But we never knew any of these people's names. The only evidence they even existed are these ruined temples. Does that mean their legacy is truly gone? No. These temples give us the knowledge that these people existed. And that's enough. That's worth remembering. For Elden Ring, I think this is one of its primary themes. Remembrance. I mean, every major boss you kill rewards you with something called a remembrance, a memento of this great being that holds immense power. For the Regal Ancestors Remembrance, the description on it reads, "Ancestral spirits exist as a phenomenon beyond the purview of the Erd Tree. Life sprouts from death, as it does from birth. Such is the way of the living." It's unknown just how old these beasts are. Perhaps they're from before the Erd Tree, during the time of the Great Tree, or maybe even older than that. Regardless, they exist apart from the Erd Tree, hidden deep underground, resting at these hallowed temples. And yet, despite this separation, despite their presumed insignificance, they are absolutely significant, important. And just as Elden Ring desperately wants you to explore and uncover the lore of this world, it also desperately wants you to simply play the game, to enjoy this incredible piece of art years in the making. Elden Ring is the culmination of the Souls series, learning from its past triumphs and failures, and creating one of the most enthralling games I've ever played. Somehow, FromSoft defied odds and made a game that can appeal to anyone, building an incredibly passionate community. New players and old players alike, everyone has their own part to play. This is why Elden Ring gives you so much freedom. Every player's experience in this game will be different. We can write our own history. In some strange meta sense, I think that Elden Ring 2 may just be a part of our real life history. 100 years, 1,000 years, hell, maybe even 10,000 years from now, when people look back on the birthing era of video games, maybe Elden Ring and its 30 million copies sold will stand out. Maybe people will still be playing this game, still talking about it. Because in the lands between, the fallen leaves tell a story. The very first words uttered in the game, and what a beautiful introduction to this world. A leaf. This seemingly unimportant, easily forgotten fragment. And yet every single one has its own story to tell. Not a single ruined stone, not a single person who once lived in this breathtaking world is unimportant. Every event, every house, every tree, every leaf was a part of these brilliantly crafted lands. And so are we. So are you. So go embark upon your own adventure, and write your own story in the lands between, because Elden Ring is for everyone.
However ruined this world has become, However mired in torment and despair, life endures. Births continue. There is beauty in that, is there not?
Thank you all very much for watching. Can you believe that 91% of you guys are not subscribed? If you did enjoy the video and want to see more of my content, then please consider subscribing. It helps me out a ton. And also, remember to leave a like if you liked. And feel free to drop a comment on your thoughts on Elden Ring. Let's keep this conversation going. There's just so much to unpack with this game. And speaking of which, I also have a Discord. So if you're interested in joining the Embercord community, then the link is in the description. Thank you all so very much. And as always, my name is Ember, and I'll see you next time.